Welcome back to Made for More. I am your host, Holly J. Moore. Made for More is all about giving you one tool each episode to show up as the best version of yourself. Because we don't want you just surviving, we want you to absolutely thrive. I am joined today and thankfully every day by my producer, Aaron Bender.
And a very good day to you.
Thank you.
We didn't talk about this part of the transition. We talk about the topic.
Yes.
And then you throw a transition at me, and I have no idea what to say. And then this time I looked over at you to see if you were looking at me because I've moved lights, and you can actually see me now.
Yes, I can see you.
I've moved lights and laptops, and we're taking people behind the scenes. They don't even care.
I know, but a lot of people don't think you're in the same room as me, actually. Remember, some people are like, wait, is Aaron there? We are really going behind the scenes. 3, 2, 1, there he is. Proof that you are, in fact, in the same room. Although anymore, it doesn't even really matter. And you're back.
All right, there we go.
Yes.
So the guest today, who is India Kern?
India Kern is amazing. She helps people decide if they should divorce or not. You know, because a lot of times people come into our office and they're really not even sure they want to divorce yet. And of course, we as lawyers, as legal professionals, really aren't qualified to help them through that process. But India does. That's what she helps the people with. I am joined today by certified divorce coach India Kern. India, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yes. So I know that you do divorce coaching for people that are currently going through a divorce, but you also do you have another interesting body of work where you help people who are still deciding if divorce is the right option for them. Isn't that right?
That is true. And they're one of my favorite types of clients to work with, because even though I'm a certified divorce coach, in no way am I an advocate for divorce. In fact, if I can help save a marriage, that is the ultimate goal. And not everyone can be saved naturally. Right. So in the event that reconciliation is not an option, I help those people walk through the process of divorce as peacefully as they can.
Absolutely. I love that. Me being a divorce lawyer, owning a law firm that does exclusively family law, divorce and custody, we see a lot of people calling us and coming in and talking to us who, they always say like, I just want to know my rights, or I'm just exploring my options. And when we sort of dig into the conversation with them, we find out they're really not sure if they actually want a divorce yet. And of course, we're really not qualified to walk them through that process or to help them with that decision. So tell us a little bit about how you actually help people decide if this is right for them or not.
Yeah. So actually, I'm still working with a client that came to me about a year ago. And he's like, I just don't know what to do. I know I'm at a crossroads. I don't know if I should stay in this marriage or divorce, and I'm here just to get some clarity. And I said, great. I'm so glad you came to me now rather than later, because we can start looking at this. So what I showed him is really, the focus was on him, not so much her.
Yeah.
And we started looking to see what was going on. But I also gave him an overview of what divorce would look like if he chose that path. So most of the work we did was him looking at himself, and because, a lot of times we look to the other person and there's so much blame on that person, but we have no control over that other person. We have control over only ourselves.
Yes.
So that's where the viewpoint, or that's what we focused on. So as we did that, then it came up, well, ideally, what would you want to do? And he's like, ideally, I would like to stay together. So then I connected him to a marriage counselor.
Okay.
And so that marriage therapist also came in, and it ended up being a team of people that were helping them. And so they did marriage counseling, which I just have so much admiration for this man, because he came to me patient, because he was not in a hurry to do anything rash. and because it's a huge decision, as you know.
Yeah.
And so, so in the all this processing of where he was going to therapy with his wife, and then actually going to therapy on his own, that was another team member, if you will, another professional that came in the process to help him decide what was the best decision he could make, the most wise and informed. And
Yeah.
so after about 9, 10 months of really doing work and becoming aware, he decided, you know what, I think it's gonna I think divorce is where I'm headed. And so,
Okay.
but it was a very deliberate and just wise and informed decision that he made. And I told him, if only more people were like you, I
Right.
think the world would be a better place, to be honest.
Yeah. So have you, the statistics that I've heard about, and I think I've seen it kind of play out in my experience in real life too, but I'm really curious what you have seen. In my experience, women will think about divorce for a really long time, like a couple
Mm-hmm.
years,
Mm-hmm.
before they make a decision. And men will make the decision so much quicker. Like that, generally, they're not thinking about it for a couple years. It may be like a month or two. What has been your
Mm-hmm.
experience with that?
I see the same thing that you
Okay.
see. And that's why he was such an anomaly.
Right.
I was like,
Yeah.
this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's really impressive that you want to invest this much time, and you want to become aware, and you want to do the work. Because
Right.
a lot of people don't want to do the work. But yeah, I would say I see the same thing, that it, especially when they are in a power position, like say
Mhm.
they're affluent,
Right.
things decisions are made fast, because a lot of times they're CEOs and they have to
Right.
make decisions, and they're a
Absolutely.
dominant personality. So
Yes.
deciding on things is kind of part of their jam,
Yes.
right? That's what they do. So
Yes.
it doesn't surprise me when the more affluent quickly decide on things, because that's what they do in business. So of course it
Yes.
translates in
You
their
know what?
personal life.
This is so fascinating you're saying this right now, because as I was driving here this morning, I was thinking about this episode and, what we're going to
Mhm.
talk about and the questions I wanted to ask you. And I was just kind of reflecting myself. And, I have been taught and I have come to believe like successful people make quick decisions. And I have
Mhm.
always prided myself on making
Right.
quick decisions.
Mhm.
And, I'm a CEO and I do all the
Mhm.
things in business too. And I thought, man, it's a good thing like I have never like actually wanted to divorce, because I may have made that decision a
Right,
little too
right.
quickly. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting that you're saying that, because I think that's absolutely true. Particularly like successful people are used to making very quick decisions.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's like you make the decision and you move on. Good or bad,
Right,
you just move
right.
on with your life, and that is how you go through life.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's really interesting. So how in your work, like how do you kind of get them to slow that decision process down? I mean, if that's
Well,
what they should
yeah,
do.
it all, I think it depends on the individual. This man was in no hurry, and that
Yeah.
was admirable, because he had been in a dysfunctional situation for a long time. So, yeah, it's dependent on each individual, but I would say, if I had to call it, and they were a type A, dominant, if you know the disc styles,
Yes.
dominant personality, they're gonna pull that ripcord faster than if
Right.
they're more deliberate and more a thinker. Like I speak to think, and some people think before they speak.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like my husband, for instance,
Yeah.
he really thinks about what he says before he says it. Where I talk to think,
Yeah.
and so
You
that's
kind
the
of
difference.
process out loud.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huh. So well, let me just ask you, is there in your work of,
Mhm.
helping people make this huge significant decision in their life, whether or not to stay in their marriage or to divorce, I mean, are you like, let's just really slow this down and think it through? Or is there any value to like, yes, this has been dysfunctional for so long, let's pull the ripcord and get out?
Well, I would say for his case, it was definitely, let's think about this, let's slow things down. And because he was in no hurry, that's what we did. Now, I do have other clients that are in a hurry. And so I want to slow that down just so they know what they're getting into.
Right.
Because, the grass does look greener if you're in a bad situation.
Right.
And as you and I both know, divorce is difficult,
Yes.
no matter if you want it or
Or
not.
not.
you
Yes.
know
Yeah.
so it's I think that's the delusion that it looks like, oh, I have these single friends or they're divorced and they have every other weekend free and it looks so
Right.
great, and then they get into it and like, oh wow, this is a lot. It looked really good from the outside.
Right.
So I like to give them everything, the overview. This is what you're looking at.
Yeah.
This is what you're walking into. And it may
Right.
seem, especially if you're hanging out with those divorced friends, it may seem like it's all, happy unicorns and fun, but it's not. I mean, there's going to be
Right.
some hard moments. So that's
Right.
how I would slow it down. And there's some practices we do where we really look at ourselves rather than the other person, because that's what we tend to do is we
Right.
blame, and it's her fault, it's his fault, if only he didn't, she didn't. But really, we have to look at what is our accountability in this, because
Right.
even if the other person does something off the rails, fair, whatever, the other person still has accountability in the whole unwinding of the marriage.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
Always. Right. Like,
and
yeah.
exactly. And that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. So in doing that exercise of sort of, turning the mirror back on yourself, looking at, okay, what was my part in this unraveling of the relationship or in the problems that exist? Does that help people? How does that help people like make the decision?
Mhm. Well, I think it puts them in the power position, because if you're always blaming someone else, you're the victim. Whereas
Right.
if you take accountability, you're taking ownership. You have agency. You're like, you know what? I get to make decisions too. It's not because of this other person I'm this way. So it's changing the narrative where you're not the victim. And I think
Yes.
that our society in general has a tendency to be the victim. Whereas if you own your accountability in it, then you take the position, the power position. So you get to
Right.
make decisions.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I actually talk a lot to the staff and the team here at the law firm about, the book, The Power of Ted, sort of moving from that victim position to being a
Hmm.
creator and actually taking responsibility
Right.
and feeling like you have the freedom to, to be something other than the victim. So I
Right.
love that. Yeah,
And a good point in that is when you're the victim, you give the other person all your power.
absolutely. Yeah.
So when you take agency, you are taking back your power. So by you
Yeah.
reflecting on how you where your responsibility is in this breakdown, then you are actually owning and empowering yourself.
Right. Yeah. I love that. So I know you push out a lot of content on social media and you've, written blogs and different things around this topic. Explain to us the concept of getting bitter or better.
Okay. So, well, I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of bitter people after
No, I've
divorce.
never seen that. Never.
Right. So I come from a family of divorce, and I love my mom to death, but there were times where I was like, is she ever going to get over this divorce? And
Yes.
even though she was a happy person, it just really, any talk of their marriage, it just set her back into that really victim mentality. And I thought
Right.
to myself, okay, I didn't want this divorce, but I am determined to heal from this. So I don't keep bringing it up, and it's not a part of my identity.
Right.
And so that's the part of getting better rather than bitter, because I didn't want to be jaded after
Yeah.
a very contentious and painful divorce. And I knew I had the potential to do that, especially just seeing it around me as a kid.
Right.
And so I was very intentional about what I wanted the outcome to look like.
Yeah.
even though I didn't know how I was going to do it, because there weren't
Yes.
really any divorce coaches back in 2011 that I knew about.
Right. And I think you could apply that concept to anything, right? Like if you
Mm-hmm.
suffer a loss from death, or, you have like any difficult thing you go through in
Mm-hmm.
life. I mean, you could
Right.
apply that, like get
Yeah.
bitter or get better, not bitter.
Right.
So you talked a little bit about you yourself going through a divorce, and you
Mm-hmm.
wrote this really great book called Surviving the Unwanted Divorce. And I want to read something that you wrote in here.
Okay.
Well, you didn't write. I mean, you wrote it, but somebody else said it.
Yeah.
But I think it's just so poignant. In order to love who you are, you cannot hate the experience that shaped you, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
really what we're talking about, is like almost having an appreciation, a sense of gratitude for, a marriage that didn't work out, or, some of these harder things in life that we have to go through, because that made you who
Mm-hmm.
you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think behind growth is suffering.
Always.
So,
Yes.
so there was this extreme suffering that I went through, but as a result, I grew exponentially. Like if you
Right.
said, India, I could launch you back into your former life, I'd be like, no, no, thank you.
Right.
I like the person I am now so much more than the person that went through that divorce. And oftentimes I think, man, if I could just, this brain could just be transplanted to that person, I would have
Yeah.
done things so differently.
Right. I know. I tell my kids this all the time. Like, I wish life wasn't this way, but the way life works is like you have to have some pain to have growth and to
Mhm.
to become the best version of yourself. And I hate it. That sucks, but that is how it is. So,
Right.
buck up, buttercups.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I know you talk a lot about in your book how, it was a difficult divorce. It sort of blindsided you.
Mhm.
And to all of our listeners who, are going through a divorce, I highly do recommend India's book, Surviving the Unwanted Divorce, because there's a lot of great stuff in there. But you talk about how you're so thankful for it. You couldn't be the woman that you are today, the person that you are
Mhm.
today,
Right.
without going through all of that. And some of it was pretty gnarly, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And, I feel like I really could have, I haven't been through a divorce, but I could have written that same book, with the tragic loss of my brother in a car accident, or so
Mm.
many other
Mhm.
difficult
Mhm.
things in life.
Mhm.
But how do you get, and maybe this really isn't in your scope of work, because I know you're not necessarily a therapist, but
Right.
like, how do you get people from the place of bitterness and of, are they ever going to get over this, to the
Mhm.
place where you're at, where I feel like I'm at, where it's like, I'm thankful for all that pain and
Mhm.
suffering, because my life wouldn't be what it is today. I wouldn't be the person I am today without it. How do you get people to that
Mhm.
place?
Yeah. So, honestly, you have to become aware, and I can't teach awareness. No one can, right?
Right.
It's asking questions and pulling it out of that person. And we all go through life transitions, like what you mentioned about your brother.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but that is a major life transition. And through those life transitions, if you are invested in healing, if you want to do the work to get better, it will happen. And so there is a cycle of a life transition. I don't know if you'd like me to share with you about that, but
Sure.
that's how most people they have an entry period. It's like in the valley. So they go in the valley. And most of the time, when you enter that period, you think it happens when the crisis hits. So when your husband says, I'm out, or, it's over, you're like, that's when it started with it. When in reality, if I look at my life, it started a lot earlier. I was just
Mm,
in denial, right? So I
right.
entered that valley earlier.
Right.
And so if you imagine a circle and going like a clockwise, you enter into the crisis, you go into the entry period, which is the valley. And then you're experiencing doubt, uncertainty, you're scared, you can't think, you have like, the reptilian brain, your fight or
Yes.
flight because you don't
Yeah.
know what to do. And you probably get those calls during that time and
Yes.
people are freaking out on the phone.
Right.
And so that's when everything just is so it's chaotic. So then you start realizing, you know what, this divorce is going to happen, or this is real, this life crisis is really happened. So
Right.
you move to the settling in period, is what I call it. And that would be the second quadrant of the 4.
Okay.
And this is where you're underwater. So if you put the watermark across the half circle, like the equator,
Yeah.
it's where you really go underwater. You don't know, you do a lot of shoulda, coulda, woulda, and you look at the past, like, what could I have done to prevent this? If only I'd been this certain way, then he wouldn't have wanted to leave.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of regret. And you stay in that period. There's really no certain amount of time, but underwater is where you stay most of the life transition. And I like to compare it to an acrobat that swings between 2 stages. So you go from settling in to surrendering. That's when you're like, you know what? I'm here.
Yep.
There's a reason I'm here, and I am going to learn as much as I can out of this. I don't really know what this teaches me, especially like with a death. Like, what am I supposed to gain from this? And
Yeah.
so what you do is you swing back and forth like an acrobat. You go from, you know what? I can understand how I've learned from this, what I can gain, how I can help others, to, oh man, I should have done this. And if only, and you just go back and forth. And so that is the majority of a life transition. And for me, I stayed there way too long. I stayed there probably 3 years, where I was like
Yeah.
going back and forth, and I
Right.
couldn't, I just couldn't quite get out of that stage. So once you start going more toward the 4th quadrant, above, your eyes become above the water, and you're like,
Yes.
oh, wait, I can use this to help others. So that was when I was like, I'm going to write a book. This
Okay.
is the
Yeah.
gift. This is the
Yeah.
direction. This is the aha moment. So that's the
Right.
last quadrant. And that's when people realize what this transition, whatever it is, divorce, death,
Yeah.
whatever it is, what it actually can do or help others. So I decided to write a book, Surviving the Unwanted Divorce, and that was the gift from all this. The gift I got out from all the muck and mire. I call it
Yeah.
the valley, because if you think about a valley, and like when you're there, and you're in the muck and mire, guess what grows? Plants grow in manure. So this is the
Yes.
growth that happened, right?
Yes, that's true.
So then you come full circle, and you're at the top, and that is the direction. I like to say at the very top is the faith challenge. And my coach told me, is when you go out on a limb, you say, I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to help others. I'm going to be that coach to other individuals going through divorce, and you hear the chainsaw behind you. So you just got to jump, and
Yeah.
the net, you will be okay. And that's the faith challenge at the top. So that is a typical life transition for anything:
For
bankruptcy, job
anything.
loss, death,
Yeah.
divorce.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about your work of helping people decide, but you are also a certified divorce coach where you're helping people who are in it. They're in the valley.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about how that works. Like how do you do that work?
So I start out with a complimentary consultation. We see if we are a fit, if it would make sense for them to even do coaching. So I share with them how I typically work, and so most people come to me and they'll do a package. So they do like 5 sessions, and then if they still want more, they continue. I'm different than a therapist in the sense that I'm not supposed to be in your life forever. I'm
Yeah.
really supposed to get you through this life transition.
They hopefully will outgrow you.
Yes, I
Yes.
want to launch them out of the nest. So
Yes.
I take a from this point forward approach versus a therapist who looks behind in the rear view
Yeah.
mirror to see the family of origin. They ask the question, why? Why are you this way? And they look at all the backstory, where I don't do that. I look at from this point forward, how? How are we going to get you from point A to point B?
Right.
And so I give them the tools. I share with them practices that they can start really analyzing their thought, their mindset. So much of it is mindset and getting
So
out of
much.
that victim mentality.
Yes.
And so many of my clients have therapists too. So it's not conflicting. We have very little overlap. So,
Yeah.
that's the difference, is that I also help them with strategy. So like when they come to you, they're not spinning and
Yes.
going off the rails. So you can actually do your what you do best, which is the legal.
The
And
legal
so
part of
I
it. Yes.
prepare them for the business of divorce. So they're not wasting your time or their money talking
Right.
to you about things that have no bearing on their case.
Right, absolutely. When we first met and we talked about the dynamic of, clients calling their attorney, calling their divorce attorney, and, spending an hour on the phone at $600 an hour or whatever the
Right.
case may be, and just kind of spinning from the emotional aspect of it, which, I think it's super important that clients tend to that part of their life of this transition that's going on, because it's huge. So I don't mean to say at all that that should be minimized, but the thought does run through my head that like there could be someone cheaper to do this with, and so it's like we want to be there for our clients, but at the same time we're really not qualified to sort of walk them through those moments where they're just reeling emotionally, and it's really not about the legal aspect of it. So that's where you come in.
Yeah, I help prevent emotional mistakes.
Yes, that's great. Yeah, I love that. That's good. That's good. Well, the last thing I wanted to point out from your book, because I just thought, wow, this is powerful. And I think anybody listening to this that, is going through a divorce or has gone through a divorce maybe would want to do this, but you wrote a letter to your ex. And it was basically a thank you note. And I'm not going to read it because it is kind of lengthy and I might even cry reading it. But I just thought, wow, that's so powerful. And it's kind of, coming back to what we talked about earlier, where it's like you really come to a place where you are thankful for the pain and suffering and the hardship that you had to go through because it got you to this point in your life. Do you have clients write this letter to their ex?
I haven't. Maybe I should incorporate that.
Okay.
I think I totally forgot. I wrote that book in 2017,
Right.
and so you know how you forget things.
Yes.
But I think that would be a great practice, and
Yeah.
and I think it really did help me because I truly am grateful for that shakeup because
Right.
it changed me for the better, and like I wouldn't be doing the work I do. I feel
Yeah.
like this work that I do with divorce coaching is my purpose.
Right.
I love helping people come out of this better. And
Yeah.
that's my whole goal. This life transition gave me purpose, and that's why I'm so thankful.
Yeah. I love that. And when I'm talking to clients and meeting with clients and sort of going, on this journey with them, sometimes I'm like, what happened? Like you hate this person so much, but you have children together. You built a life together. You spent half your adult life with them. Like what happened? But they get so locked in, or maybe they're stuck in the valley, and they're just so used to replaying the tape of all the bad things. And so I feel like having people do this letter to their ex where it's a thank you letter, maybe would be like the mindset shift that they need to kind of look back and sort of pull out the good from the relationship and also, the bad, like what the bad then produced in terms of growth.
Well, it's interesting you say that because love and hate are so close.
My grandma used to say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the indifference is the opposite of love, not hate. Hate
Right.
is very aligned with love. So,
So true.
it's not that crazy that they get so emotional
Yeah.
and invested in the hate because it's just not that different than love.
Yes. My grandma always said there's a fine line between love and hate.
It's true.
Yes.
It is true.
It is true. Well, India, thank you so much for the work that you do and for being here today. And if people want to work with you, how should they go about doing that?
Yeah, so just visit my website. It's my name, India like the country, Kern, KERN.com. And we can set up a complimentary consultation to see if coaching would even make sense. But thank
Great.
you, Holly, for having me.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
excited that I was on here today. I appreciate
Yes.
it.
Yes, absolutely. Our pleasure. I've got just a little bit more to say. We all have valleys in our life. And sometimes we can get stuck in those valleys because the valley is a part of life transitions. And none of us will escape the life transitions, the really hard things in life. It's just a part of the deal. But you've got to be able to get from the valley to get your head above water. And sometimes you need a guide. You need a little tour guide or a trail guide to do that. I know I definitely had guides in my life that helped me get my head above water on more than one occasion when I was in a valley. And so if you find yourself in a valley, I would say one of the best things to do is bring someone into your life to help you get your head above water. Because once you get your head above water, then you start to see the gifts that the pain and suffering brings. Because I promise you, there are always gifts involved, but you have to be willing to look for them. And please don't ever forget, you were made for more.